Hello, 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 everyone. How's it going? Hi. Okay, yep, good. All set for the second session. Okay, I welcome you all again to the part Global Hack Week and the part two of building a Chrome extension. And hopefully you remember what we did before we went on a break. And if you're joining me for the very first time, this is the part two of building a Chrome extension session. The code is available on GitHub, so all those links have been shared. If you're joining just right now, the first thing that I would request you would be to please register for the session. The link is in the chat. Okay, so please do register for the session. uh, Other than that, if you want to get access to the code base, it is available on GitHub, as I said, and the link is in the chat again. Okay, so you can access the code base here, giving you a very quick overview of what we are trying to build or what we are doing. I updated the README a bit after we went on the break. So the project aims to create a Chrome extension and an accompanying website, which is the one that we are building initially. For the first thing that we are building is the accompanying website, because that would be easier syntax to learn, easier syntax to understand, and it would also help you grasp the power of, I don't know, React maybe, uh, the setup, all those things. And the idea of the project is to build something which will help developers organize and manage resources for their coding projects. So the example that I gave is like example, let's say this one stop Chrome extension. What all links have I shared with you since the inception of this project? We started very first by downloading like VS Code. So that is the first link. So to build this project, you need VS Code. Then we went to download Node.js, right? So that is the second link. Then we searched and like read the documentation of Mongoose, of Express, of Course. Uh, yeah. Then we also went to MDN to understand like HTTP status code responses, the HTTP methods. Uh, we used hopscotch, so we did all of these things. MongoDB Atlas. So imagine if you have to share this project with someone and guide them through all the things that you had to go through, all the documentation, all the websites, everything. That is what this project aims to be. You can kind of note down all the links, you can note down any, like, from the documentation you can note down a code snippet, that to create a express server, this is the minimum snippet that you need. uh, so the Chrome extension will kind of help you note down these things. So it's, I think someone when I was discussing this project with a friend, uh, they told me that so you're basically building a shareable to-do list, but exactly not a to-do, but more like done list. I'm like, kind of, yeah. But I say that this is more closer to already existing project called as raindrop.io. Uh, so I'm kind of building a cloning the functionality, not all of it, but some of it. Uh, from raindrop.io, so not exactly a very unique thing out there. But there is one thing that would definitely is unique, would be code snippets. Okay, so this is similar to raindrop.io but specifically tailored to developers needs during your project development phase. And as I said, some key features would be project creation, management, link saving, organizing it, Q&A storage, code snippets, authentication, and depending on the time that we have, we'll try and incorporate a few more features here and there. Okay, so shout out to raindrop.io, not sponsored. They don't pay me to do this, but I think it's a good thing out there. Okay, so could be helpful to you, could not be, depends on you. Okay, and to quickly introduce myself again, my name is Utkarsh, but I go by UT, so that's what you would see on screen as my name, and it's easier to search for me by UT rather than my full name. Everyone at MLH knows me as UT. Very easy to kind of remember and pronounce that ways. And yeah, welcome again. And now we will continue our journey. So I hope you all have registered. Hopefully, please do. Helps you, helps me, helps MLH. And once that registration is done, you can create your own version of this code base. You can fork this repository, clone it. Like forking is like basically making a copy of this on your account. This is my account. You can create a copy on your account, download it, make changes. Forking, because you can always keep your version updated to whatever changes I make. uh, and maybe plug that I would add would be, if you find this helpful, start the repository. Not a requirement, so don't feel obliged to do it. But if you find it interesting, if you find it helpful, do it. Okay, cool. So I think that's good enough introduction. Now I'm a person of hands, getting your hands dirty. So I'm going to directly dive into code. So before we went on the break, we had ignore the API testing folder for now. That was something that I was experimenting with right now. So ignoring that, before we went on the break, we had actually created our server. We had created two routes. One was a post route, one was a get route. In the get one, like we have created a project one data, and it was actually visible on MongoDB Atlas cluster as well. We have done all about cluster databases collections in the previous session, so I'm going to not spend too much time here. Now if you notice, we had only created name project one. The tags is an empty array. So the next request that I want to create, okay, there is a question. uh, if you're lagging, that is fine. I would just say copy paste everything. We don't have many files to actually copy paste, so it should be pretty easy. Copy everything, not everything actually. Package JSON, index.js, npm-rc, create a .env file, okay, and copy these variable names. The port equals to and MongoDB URI equals to. Replace the values here. So your port number should be 5001, and this should be your Atlas connection string. You can find that connection string by going into clusters, clicking on connect, going to drivers, and this is your connection string, where the DB password would be the one that you created when you kind of created this cluster. Okay, I'm not going to show my .env file because that contains my password. I don't want that to leak. So yeah, you create a .env file. When I say dot, I mean this, like the dot. Okay, and create a routes folder, copy this, then create a models folder, copy this, and you should be fine. Okay, we will work on models and routes folder again, so don't worry, it will still make sense. uh yeah, I guess that should help. Okay, okay, so moving on. So now that we are 5-10 minutes into the stream, and as I said, I like to be hands-on, getting your hands dirty, learning while you're building. uh, so that's why when we built our first route, I was like, it's okay if it does not make sense. Once you run it, it will make much more sense. Once we start commenting out and seeing the errors, it will make much more sense of what is happening. So with that analogy, we created our models, and we got to know that because we are using mongoose, when we create or do a post request and try to create a new project, then it does the validation, thankfully. And that validation was actually throwing an error saying that, oh, you're missing the name of the project on hopscotch. Okay, so we saw all of that. Now I want to update this. Okay, yes. So now starts the next part of the stream. So I want to update this project. What do I want to update? Currently it does not have uh, the tags. Okay, I want to add tags to it. Now how do I do that? So to do that, I'll have to use another HTTP method. So one of the other HTTP method that we will use is put. Okay, so the put method replaces all current representation of target resource with the request content. What this basically means is that it allows you to run an update. Okay, now there is a very big debate between put versus patch. The patch is basically to allow partial modifications to resource. Okay, and you would find some people be like, you know, use patch versus using put to update something, to make a modification. I'm not going to go into details, but I would say that would be kind of homework for you. Just do a quick research on put versus patch and when to use what, and like in what situations. In my case, I'm going to go with using a put uh, to update a resource. Okay, so let's write update code. So we are going to create a new router. Oh, not a new router. In the same router, we are going to create a new HTTP method, or use HTTP method to update our resource. So I'm going to use, as I said, put. So router.put. And now, if you remember, for the post and the get, we were doing it on the slash or the home route. Okay, but it also had some prefix associated with it, so we were doing it on slash api slash projects slash. Okay, this was our home route. But the put will need to update only one thing, one resource will be updated. Example, what I mean here is, let's say I create another project. So let me go over to hopscotch and I create a new project called as project 2. Okay, or actually let's make it a realistic data, one stop extension. So that is my new project that I'm creating. Now if I do a send here, it creates this one stop extension project. If I go over to my get now, which should get me a list of all my projects, it will now return me two things. And as you can see, it is ordered descending thanks to our code in the models, where we, no, not models, in our routes, where we sort it by created at -1. Okay. And now if I go in here, again, this should have two things. Now if I go to my projects and do a quick refresh here, there should be two things, project 1 and one stop extension, which is fine. This is good. Now the only problem is that I want to update the tags for project 1 and I want to update the tags for project 2, and they will have separate tags. They won't have the same tags is like a hashtag. So for this project 1, I maybe want to give a hashtag of let's see, uh, web develop no, not web, yeah, web and development. These are two hashtags that I want to give it. And for project 2, for one stop extension, the hashtags that I want to give it would be uh, X, Node.js backend, React frontend, Chrome web extension. So the three different tags I want to give it. So I want to update this one separately, this one separately. So what, how can I uniquely identify which project I want to update? So that's where, helpfully, thankfully, this underscore ID comes in. So this underscore ID is created by MongoDB to add a ID parameter, an identity parameter, to the to every document. Okay, so this is one document, this is second document. So to every document it adds this identity parameter, and this is unique. Okay, MongoDB says that this will be unique. So what we will do is, in our code, we will say that depending on the ID, okay, depending on the ID, we will make an update. So when someone tries to make an update, the URL should be uh, slash API slash projects and then some ID here. And if that ID matches, then the request will be successful. Otherwise, it would fail. And let's write it out. Okay. So ID, comma, again, this would be a asynchronous request because remember the whole discussion about time and stuff. So request, comma, response, and let's do a try catch. Yeah, this needs to be a double arrow. Yeah, equal to and greater than sign. Okay, this is what that means. If ligatures are a problem, let me actually turn them off. So that ways you will not see that arrow, but you will see I'm typing equals to and greater than sign. Okay. Okay, cool. Now inside the try catch, we want to update one single project. So I'm going to create a variable const updated equals to await, and then our schema, which is project dot find by ID and update. Okay. So again, thanks to Mongoose, we have it makes it so simple for us. Okay. So we will do find by ID and update, use that method, and we will say that in the request in the URL, if the request.params.id exists, like take this ID which will be provided, and then request.body, okay, take whatever changes the user is trying to make. We had seen what comes in the body, okay, before, and then we will say new colon true. Okay. And okay, cool. So const updated is project find by ID and update, and we'll update it on the ID. Request body and options is new true. We'll see what that does for us. Res.json and update it. Okay, so we'll send back the updated JSON, and if there is an error, I'm going to be lazy again, and I'm going to say rest.status 500 dot json with that error. Okay. Yep, I think this should be good. And now let's try out the put method. So we'll go back to hopscotch.io. We'll copy over this URL. Okay, and my method is going to be put, and let's try it without anything for the time being. So it says 404 not found. This URL is not found because there is nothing in our code base which says that try a put method on just a forward slash. Okay, it needs an ID. So if I do dot colon ID and I send, error, cast to object ID failed for value this. Okay, add path this for model this. Okay, so very simply what this means is that, well, this is not a valid ID. Colon ID is not an ID. So where do we find this ID? So if you go over to our MongoDB and then you take this ID, now this ID needs to come from your MongoDB Atlas cluster, okay, not mine. You don't have to update my MongoDB. Please don't do that. What you need to update is your, like, go to your MongoDB cluster, go to find the created project, get the ID, and if I put that and now try to send it, updated. Okay, but I did not actually add anything in the body, so I don't think it will update anything as such. Everything still looks the same. Now in the body, I'm going to pass a JSON, and in the JSON, what I'm going to pass is tags. And tags is supposed to be an array of strings. So for project one, the tags that I want to add is web and test. Okay, because this is a test project and everything. So now if I do a send here, as you can see, project one, and it has now two tags. Initially it was empty. Let me do a refresh. Now it has tags, an array of two things, web and test. Now, similarly for one stop extension, we'll have to copy this ID, come over here and paste it. The tags that I want to update it, it would be Chrome extension, uh, Express server, React ML, GHW, MLH. I think these are some good tags to remember this project. Let's hit send. Initially empty. Let me do a refresh. It's an array of five things, right? There we go. So that is basically our put. Okay. Okay. So the next thing was the new true thing. So this is something like that Mongoose wants you to set. I can find, uh, let me see if I can find it very quickly. Unfortunately, I can't find it quickly, but basically, it is a Mongoose JS requirement slash schema thing that if you want to get back the newer result, that's why you would need to set this options with new true. Okay, so that basically fetches the new results. That's the idea. Okay, very simply. Options. Yeah, definitely somewhere here is what I had seen. And actually, let me find a Stack Overflow answer. So this is the actual use case of our project. So let's say I did not know that what exactly to set there. So I do a Google search and then I find that, oh, in Mongoose 4.0, the default value for new option has changed to false, which means it's returning an old doc. So you need to explicitly set the option to true to get the new version of the doc after the update is applied. Okay. So this is the idea of the project. This is the use case of the project, that now when I'm building this project and I was like, okay, why is it not returning the newer version? uh, then I can kind of make a note of this link for future reference. Okay, so that I can go back to my all saved links and I can like, oh yeah, I know that this is something that had happened. And then you can share it with others, tell them that, oh, if you are doing find by id and update, you'll have to set the new to true to get a newer version of the model. Okay, so this is the use case of our project, saving these links that you have to visit while you're building this project. Links, documentation, uh, blogs, Q&A. Okay, so all those things. Cool. Okay, so hopefully the put is now done and you can see that, well, we have successfully actually added updated not added updated our two documents. uh, the way we get all projects and the way we do a put on a single id, we can also do a get on a single document. Okay, so we can get a single project. So let's also write code for that. Get single project, update single project. Okay, get single project, well, the name says it all, it will be a get request, so get. And now we know to get about a single id we have to do a colon id. So what happens to this colon part? Okay, so that kind of gets replaced with whatever you have added here. Okay, that is what the request.params.id is for. It replaces whatever you give it here to this. Again, an async await, so async request comma response. And now inside this I'm going to do a try catch, and inside the try I'm going to say const project equals to await project with a capital P dot find by id. So we can now find by just the id, and we can use request dot params dot id here to find a single project by a single id, and we'll send back that response res.json project. Okay, but if for some reason there is any error, then rest dot status 500 dot json error. Okay, let's try this one out. Let me just format the document. Okay, to try it out, well, we can actually do it in browser itself. So slash projects slash gives me everything, but if I copy this id and go for a single id, it returns me one object. If I go for this one, then it returns me project one. Okay, and this one should return me one stop extension. Yeah, there we go. Cool. uh no worries, there should be pretty easy. And finally, delete. Okay, that's important. What if I want to delete something? So to do that, well, the http method is called delete, and you will all again delete by id one at a time. We'll not do a delete all. id and async and request comma response. So now you see a pattern emerging, and that is all that developing is about. Once you get to know one thing, then everything else is kind of a pattern. So now once we delete something, we don't assign it to any variable because there's nothing to be returned as such. Okay, delete will not return anything because, well, it has been deleted. So I am going to do find by id and delete. Okay, and the id will come from request dot params dot id. And to tell the user that it has been successfully deleted, we will do rest.json, and we will post like have a message saying deleted uh, I'm going to do a backticks here. Deleted project with ID, and then dollar curly brackets, and I will pass it the request.params.id variable successfully. But if there is any error, again, being lazy, I am going to go. So the reason why I say lazy, because you have multiple HTTP codes that could be, you know, passed. Example. So a good practice would be to actually take a look, and depending on what could be the failure, you will pass a different HTTP code. So example, uh, if it is successful, then of course automatically it goes to 200. When we do the put, okay, we should technically pass 201 created, right? Put and post. So we can actually do that. Let me do that. Let's go for a better version. So rest dot status dot json, and in the case of put, I'm going to pass 201 if it is successful. Similarly for the post, create, yes, here rest dot status of 200 dot json. So now we are using correct HTTP codes. So it's a good idea that you actually put in proper HTTP codes so that it helps the user to check whether, this correct, not correct, what happened here, and they will most of the times assume that you are sending back correct responses, or at least your HTTP codes are mapped properly. So yeah, always try and put in the correct one. Interestingly, there is a code which is called as I am a teapot. 418. So when you send 418, it basically means that uh, it is very similar to something not allowed. Okay. uh, this was created as part of April Fool's joke. Don't use it, but it's just there. If you are trying to be funny at some point, definitely add it. Okay. Yeah, so now let's test out our two new status codes that we have added. So I'm going to go over to the post, and I'm going to create a test project, and previously it returned a 200. Okay, now I'm going to create a test project, and it still returns 200. Okay, which is interesting. Oh, because I wrote 200. Okay, this should be 201. My bad. Yes, now it's correct. So now I actually have two test projects because I ran this whole thing twice. So we'll have to delete both of them. Now, if I go over to my get, there must be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Project one stop extension, test project twice. Fine. That is okay. Now, I want to update one of the test projects. So I'm going to go over here, change the tags, and call it test project. Update the ID and change the tags. It is done. Now let's try the delete. So delete, and delete takes in the ID. So I'm going to delete this update, the one that I updated. I'm going to send back deleted successfully. Oops. Okay. 200. Okay. This was successful. And message deleted project with ID successfully. So this ID came from here. Okay. So now you know what does request.params.id uh, returns. Okay. That's the variable here. I also want to delete the other test project. So let me just go in, and this was ending with 01BB76, and now it is 578216. Send. This is also deleted. So now if I go over to my get, it should now have only two things. Okay. So even output was 201 created. Okay, which is what you should use as per the documentation. It is a successful response and it changes the resource. So that is why 201. Uh, you can also have a 200. Okay, so our 200 actually works for get, put, post. Okay, I don't think there is anything special for delete. Yeah, there's nothing like for delete, because well, you have deleted something, it just no longer exists. So all you can do is send a custom response. That is what we are doing here. Message deleted project with this ID successfully. Okay, cool. So that is all our project routes, and let me now go over any questions because I've been away from chat. Hello 404. Oh, you're welcome. Oh yes, I'm a teapot. Hello. Oh really, I did not know this. Okay, so nice. So now that we have created our project route successfully, we have done nearly every route that needs to be there. All our CRUD operations are basically complete. Create, which is the post, read, which is the get, update, which is the put, and delete. Okay, in CRUD. Now, similar to the project model and the project routes, we want to create link route and Q&A route. Okay, so let me first push all of this. So this is session 2. Okay, so session 2 stuff is gone, and now we want to actually do some stuff. And I say some stuff, what I want to do is basically we want to add two new models. Okay, so I am, wait, let me see how much time do we have. So we are like 40 minutes into the stream. I definitely want to achieve a bit more today. So what I'm going to do is cheat a bit. Okay, I am going to quickly create and copy paste some stuff, but it will be available on GitHub, so don't worry about it. Actually, let me write this one down and I'll cheat in the next one. Equals to require mongoose const link schema. So I'm keeping both of these open so that you can see the similarities between the project and the link. And also, once you get this right, then you kind of understand everything about creating model. Okay, creating model, creating routes. It's not that difficult. These are the easiest part in server development. The only difficult part would be business logic. Okay, example, let's say when you try to update a request, then you want to do some behind the scenes magic. So that is the business logic. So that's the most difficult part. Creating a server, sending a request, receiving a response is the easiest part of server development. And once you do that, that's all there is to server development. Everything else is just plain old JavaScript doing some logic. Okay, that's all. Also, let me make the screen a bit more bigger for you. So now you can focus more on the screen. And also, I can go away from here so that you only see the screen. So mongoose.schema, and will our links will have a title, and it will be of type string, and it needs to be required. Okay, actually not really. We can just save URLs without any title, but actually okay, I'll keep the title. Then our link will have a URL, of course. Okay, it will be of type string again, and it would be required as well. Okay, uh, then you can add some description or notes, whatever you call it. I'm going to call it notes, and it would be of type string, but I'm not saying that it is required. Tags, you can have hashtags for link as well. So the reason why I'm adding these tags is because when we create a thing, okay, a search schema, fuzzy search, as I call it, or not as I, everyone calls it fuzzy search. Uh, so that would help to get us all the links, project names that have the same tags. Okay, and as always I will have a created at. Okay, so this is our link schema, and that's it. Module dot exports equals mongoose dot model. Our model name will be called as link, and it is actually exporting this whole link schema that we created, right? So that is the majority of the code. Now there is one thing, and actually I'll have to come back on screen for this. Now we created a link schema. Project is the parent. Okay, so it's like the outer box. The link is the inside box, which is a child of a project. So we will not post a link without it being in a project. So what we want to do is, link schema needs to know or validate against a project. So to do that, uh, there is something in Mongoose which will allow us. So how do we link project schema to link schema is basically what I'm trying to say. To do that, we can basically pass in the project ID to this. So let's do that. We'll create another thing here called as project with a small p. Okay, and inside here we will say the type of this is very different. So the type is, so like you have type string. This ID is what I am concerned about or slash interested in, this particular object ID. So this ID, it is not exactly type string. If I try to edit something, it says it is of type object ID. Name is type string, but this is a type object ID. Okay, so we can define that here. We can go like mongoose dot schema dot types dot object ID. Okay, special type, and we can then say there is, it references the project. Okay, this validation, and it is required. So if you don't have a project, well, then where will this link go? It needs to be associated with a parent. So that is why this thing. Okay, so that's one thing that I wanted to tell you slash showcase. So we have created a link schema. That is nice. The next thing would be, of course, the link routes. So now, hopefully you have seen the similarities between these two, except for this whole linking of project. Like this link belongs to whatever project gets created. Except for that, everything else is something that we have done. The only thing that we have changed is the key name. It was called name here. We are calling a title here. We created a URL, which is an extra thing. Okay, notes. It was called notes. Here it's description. Well, both of them have tags. Both of them have created that. So you see, again, programming is not that difficult. If you know the pattern, if you understand the pattern, then it's all about pattern matching, I feel. Okay, this is my way of telling you that don't be afraid or scared of, oh my god, how do I do this, how do I learn this. It's going to be very easy, don't worry. We'll create a routes, link routes.js. Now again, let's do some pattern matching here as well. So I have project routes and I have link routes. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a control C control V, or command C command V, depending on which system you are. The only difference would be here the schema would actually be the link schema, and it would come from the link. Okay, so everything else is fine. This is to, here it is create a new project, but instead it would be a new link. Router.post, yes, to create a new link. Const, instead of new project, we can call it new link. Await, now instead of checking or validating against the project schema, we are going to validate it against the link schema. So link.create, request.body, rest.status 201, .json new link, catch error. Yep, this is fine. Get all projects, it would be get all links. This is fine. Also change the variable name. Await, instead of project, it would be link.find and .sort, and this is, I guess, yeah, fine. Then get a single project, this would be get single link. Again, slash id, yes, that is fine. Instead of project, we will call this link. This is link with a capital L, because this is the schema that we have imported. Okay, the model or the schema. I keep switching between those two things. So getting a single link, again, we do const link, await link dot find by id, and this is fine, this is fine, yes. Update single link. Okay, router dot put updated, await, instead of project we do a link dot find by id and update, request dot params dot id, body new true. uh yep, this is fine. And delete a link, uh delete a link, router dot delete, da 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 da, link dot find by id and delete, rest.json, and this would be deleted link with id successfully. And yep, that's it. So you saw how easy it was to kind of create this whole new route. Once you have created the first one, the idea is pretty similar. Okay, so we have created a link route project. Done. Okay, now we need to test it. Sorry, to test it, we go over, we have to first add it to our index.js. So the way we did app.use slash api slash projects, we will now do app.use slash api slash, oh, what did we export from there? Link route, yeah, okay, fine, slash api slash links. And now instead of project routes, this would be actually link routes. I'm going to copy paste this and I'm going to call it link routes. And that would actually require the second file, link routes. Now I'll take this link routes and put it right here. This is done. This is done. Okay, perfect. Now let's go over to hopscotch and let's do everything again. So step one, we first need to go over and let's try a get first. Okay, so going to a get request. Now instead of slash projects, it would be slash links. Send a request, it came back empty, does not exist. Okay, so let's create one. So I go over to post and I try to create a new one, slash api slash links post and I try to do a send, URL is required and title is required. So these things would be provided in the body. So now I'll go application JSON and I will say it needs a title. Uh, Title of the link would be example domain. Okay. And URL is required and the project is required. So there are three things that are required. For URL, I'm going to go with the example.com. So I don't know if you are aware of this, but there is a domain example.com. That is the one that I'm going to use for the time being. So let me go over to hopscotch example.com and let me try and send it. Bad request. Okay. It is a bad request because there is something missing out. Okay. So what it is missing? It is missing the project ID. Okay. Now, how do we pass it? We actually have to recall the key project and the value would be the object ID. So I want to pass this one to the project one. So I'm going to take this particular ID and I'm going to pass it in the body and prettify the JSON. Let's do a send and it still failed. Okay. Still a bad request. Now, anyone in the chat would like to take a guess of why, what's happening here? Like before we go and solve this. Okay. Nope. Cool. That is fine. So our link one, this is very interesting. So we called it link. Okay. We are actually passing kind of everything that is required. So let's try and debug this. Okay. Let's try and debug this. So our link project, yes, needs to be a project and it needs to be an object ID. So that was also fine. So what happened? What is going wrong here? I am curious. So we will start with the debug part. Let's see. So if I go over to create a new link and I do a console.log and in here I will say we need the request.body. Okay. So let me try /API/links, which is fine. Yes. And title, URL, and project. And let's see. Unexpected single inverted comma in JSON at position 0. Okay, so there is some problem here. I think this is the problem. And let me try. And there we go. 201 created. Do you see how simple it was? Now we got it correctly. So debug, definitely. It can happen with anyone at any point, right? So now that you have understood, so why it was happening, the JSON was not proper. It had an additional dangling comma, which is not required. Project, fine. Title, fine. URL, fine. And it is referencing a project. Now, what this means is if I go over here, let's do a quick refresh. We have a links created and the link is referencing to this particular project. Okay, this one. So now if I go over here, or actually let's go over here and try to get all the links. Yes, so that will have a project ID defined as part of that. Okay, as part of the response that comes back. This ID is the link ID and this is the project ID it is associated with. So what this means is now next time we create a link, and we remember like we can kind of remember or pass which project this needs to be nested inside. Okay, that's the idea. You can also create things like you cannot delete a project if there is a link associated with it. Okay, so if you try to delete this particular project and there is a link associated with it, you can kind of stop that. You can say, oh, it's not allowed because there is a link which is associated with this. Or you can do a delete cascade, that if you delete the project, every link that is associated with that project gets deleted. Okay, so that's another thing that you could do. So that's how the idea of referencing will work in the real world. Okay. uh what else? So we have done post, get, not going to show delete and put and everything. Actually I can set show put. And to show a put, I will take this particular links, but I specifically need the link of this particular, like this particular link. So links slash id a put. And in here, what I want to do is tags. And tags can be an array of strings, so I'm going to say example. And let's try and send this. 201 created, links, refresh. There we go, example. Okay, and not going to show delete. Okay, perfect. So our link routes is completed, our link model is completed. The next one is Q&A, question and answer model. Okay, so our Chrome extension will also allow you to store question and answer. You can have a input box of question, you can have an input box of answer. You can also add a link, like take an example, Stack Overflow question, like what was your question that you searched, the answer that you found. So example, uh, if you searched for this as a question. Okay, so I'm copying this and let's do a proper Google search for this. So found like I searched for this question, the answer that I found is, let's say, this Stack Overflow answer. And the answer was that, okay, this is, you're receiving, nope, actually not, this is not really helpful. Let's say this one, if you see this and unexpected. Okay, yes, so this is the answer. So if, in a very simple language, this means whatever you're thinking is a JSON is not exactly a JSON. So you will copy this as an answer, and then you can also save this URL in your notes for future reference. Okay, so that is the whole premise of QA. Okay, question and answer model that we are going to create, so that you can add a question, you can add an answer. You can also have questions but no answers, right? Maybe if there is a question that came to your mind, you Google searched, you chat GPT'd it, uh, you deep seeked it, but you just did not find an answer, a proper answer. So you can leave that as empty. So we'll have answer as an optional, URL as an optional, tag as an optional. But this question and answer schema depends on a project, right? So we'll all again need to reference a project here. So let's create a qa.js. Again, similarities. I'm going to copy this whole thing, paste it right here. Okay, and now we'll do an update through this qa.js, and you can focus solely on screen. So this is an import, that is fine. Instead of calling it link schema, we will call it qa schema. So I can do a command D on Mac or control D on Windows to select words with the same exact name and update both of them together. QA schema. New Mongo schema, yes, this is fine. Well, it needs to be associated with a project, so this is also fine. uh, yes. Now instead of title, this will be called as question, and the question would be of type string, required true. And instead of notes, actually I'll take it one up, and here instead of notes it would be called as answer, and that is of type string. The URL will be of type string, so we can only just define string, and it's not exactly required. Okay, it's an optional field. uh, so URL string, tags would be an array of string and created at, and module.exports, we can call this model just QA, and it exports the QA schema. That's it. That was so fast, so quick, right? We've created the QA schema already. Now let's also create very similarly the routes. So we'll call it QA routes.js. I'll keep the link routes open and copy paste. Okay. So QA routes. Now in this case, here this would be called QA, let's say, and this would come from the QA schema. Create a new QA question answer. Okay. Router.post, yes, this is fine. Instead of new link, it would be new QA, and now instead of this, it would be QA.create. Error is fine. Get all QAs. Uh, this is fine. We can call this QAs, let's say. Instead of link.find, it would be QA.find dot sorted, and yep, done. Get single link. In this case, oh, single QA. Yeah, router.get by ID, and this could be just QA. This would be capital one, QA.find by ID, rest.json QA, and this is done. And update a QA, update single QA, Q and A. I think that makes much more sense. Q&A, Q&A, Q&As, and question answer, Q&A. Okay, cool. So now anyone reading the code, they can look at the comment and it would be easy to understand. Like, what's QA? Is it quality analyst? No, it's question and answer. This updated QA dot find by ID and update. Yep, this looks good. Delete. Delete a Q&A and router.delete, and this would be QA.find by ID and delete. Deleted Q and A with ID successfully, and error, and that's done, right? Yes, I think so. Okay, so we have also created the routes very quickly. We must be like superhuman or something at this point. And let's copy this one. What am I going to call it? I can call it QA routes. From routes, QA routes. Okay, and just copy paste this one, slash API slash QAs. And this could be QA routes. And let's test it out very quickly. Hopscotch. And now see, this is very annoying. And let's say you want to add, update, delete, or anything. Uh, it would be a problem. So that is why I was creating this whole API testing. So this is a schema uh, which has all the routes defined, and it has all the bodies defined, all the endpoints defined. So it would be it would make it easy for you. So what I'm trying to say here is, like, let's say I delete everything and we'll import this collection. So this is actually pushed on GitHub, so you will also have access to this. What you need to do is, once you have that on Hopscotch, let me do a hard refresh very quickly. You can go on to this import export, which is on right corner, top right, import from Hopscotch, and you have to choose files. So this will actually show you my whole system. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to click on choose files and search for, like, wherever this one is downloaded. So it for me it's called like one stop extension underscore api.json, which is this file. Okay. And now if I click on import, keep an eye on the right hand side. It says okay, everything is imported, and there we go, all the routes are here. So post with the body, you can kind of prettify it if you want, uh, change the name and everything, and you can do a send. Okay. So there is a get as well defined for that. There is a get for projects by id, put project by id, delete. Similarly for api, and similarly for question and answer. So let's do that. Don't want to save anything. Okay, post. So there is this, and it says here project id here. So this is what you will need to populate. So let's say for this particular project, project 1, that id goes in here, sample question, sample answer, url tags, and make a send, and that's it. Okay, you can also save the request, control s, or just save button here. uh, and that's done. And now if I come over here on atlas, there should be a qas, question and answers, and there we go, it is associated with this project. Okay. So now you can also do a get everything. If you want to save it, save it. There we go. You can get by id. It says colon id. If you try to do this, it's going to be an error because there is no id called as colon id. It is supposed to be this particular question and answer id without the colon. Okay. There we go. Similarly, you can do a put, you can do a delete as well. So that is everything. So this collection is actually on GitHub right now. I pushed it in the previous push. Just pushed it, right? Oh, I only did a commit. Oh, I did not do a push. Okay. Anyways, let me push it now. Git add, git commit, and this was complete link and QA routes in session 2. And now let me do a git push. Okay, so everything should be there. Backend, yeah, there we go. So if you just copy paste this JSON and then go over to Hopscotch, on top right you have import export, and this is import from Hopscotch. Okay, import from Hopscotch, and choose this JSON file, import it, and you will have all the routes defined, so you don't have to manually type everything out. I have done the brand work for you. uh, all the models are pushed, all the routes are pushed, and our server works perfectly fine. Now, at this point, any questions, anyone, before we move ahead? Let me go over to the chat. Okay, see you soon, 404. Don't worry, it should be pretty easy. It's okay if you are behind on part one, but part two, like all we did was the schema is okay. I can give you a very quick overview here. Okay, let me try that. Uh, Come back on screen and let me try to give a very quick overview. A model or a schema is basically the structure. That's the first thing. So we have created three schemas here. We have a project schema, which is the parent. Think of a big box. A project is a big box, and a project needs to have a name. A descript needs to have a name. Description and tags are optional, and we are also using this created at to keep a track of when was this project ID, when was this project created. So project needs to have these things. Second thing is a project inside the big box can have links, QAs, code snippets. That is our selling point of this extension. You can have a link saving and organization, question and answer storage, and code snippet storage. We have not done the code snippet storage right now. I'm going to give you that as homework, but we'll do it. Its structure would be slightly teeny tiny bit different than the link and the QA. uh, okay, so that's the whole idea of schema. Okay, models or schema. uh, Now routes are basically the endpoints or the URLs that you're going to hit. Every day we face URLs. Facebook.com is a URL. Facebook.com slash my username slash something is another URL, another endpoint. An endpoint can have characteristics or HTTP methods. uh, it can have a get method, which is to get the resource. It can have a post method, which is to create a resource. It can have a put method, which is to update a resource. It can have a delete method to delete a resource. And where are these resources stored? They are stored on MongoDB Atlas. Okay, uh, that's all about our resources. And then all we did was create a bunch of routes. Then we used some of the methods that exist on Mongoose, because that library is super awesome, and it gives us like some methods. Like example, for creation it does a link dot, like we can call the schema dot create. To do a get, we can do a dot find, and if we don't give it a parameter, then it finds everything or gets back everything. Then we also do a sort on it, saying that, oh, sorted by descending order. If you provide a ID, then you can also do a find by ID, where Mongoose tells MongoDB that only return me the data where the ID matches that the user has given. So what if I give it a data where the ID does not match, like this one? Well, then it will say that internal server error, uh, which is basically the catch part of it, because it could not find it. But in this case, technically, we could have sent back a 404 not found, right? That is a proper answer. Rest.status 404 not found is what we should send back. So if I update it here, and this is the get QAS, this is QA routes. There you go, 404 not found. Why? Because, well, this ID did not exist actually, but this one does exist. So let's say if I take this ID, put it here, and instead of 52 I go like 55, do a send, it returns back null. Okay, so it kind of thinks that, okay, this ID is valid, because that is what the schema check is doing. It's checking if the Mongoose schema type object ID matches. To do the matching, it actually checks how many characters exist. Okay, so as per that, it exists, but it does not exist technically. Yeah, it's very difficult to explain that ways, but you get the idea. That is what our routes are doing, the catch and the try part. The try part tries to find it, the catch part throws an error, and everything else then comes back to index.js, where in index.js we make a connection to our MongoDB URL, and then we use these project routes and we define project routes with some prefix. So like if you go to slash API slash projects slash, or slash API slash project slash ABCD, then you're basically encountering everything that is defined in the project routes. If you go slash API slash links slash something, then you're encountering the link routes. So if I do slash API slash blah, then I'm encountering the blah route, which does not exist. We don't have a definition for that. And that's why it fails. And the last line is we are basically the server is running and it's trying to listen if it works, what requests are coming in. Yeah, sorry. And yeah, so I think that is a very quick overview of what we have done so far. Hopefully that helps for people who are just behind on part one right now, and gives you at least some understanding. Okay, what's next? So we have defined the routes, we have defined our backend is kind of dev complete for the time being. Now my focus is going to be on front end. So let's start with the front end directly, okay, without wasting any time. So we are going to use Vite for our next generation front end tooling. Okay, so let me give you this link in the chat. Okay, so we'll have to talk a bit about this. And just so that there's light on my face, I'm going to switch to a light mode, even though it kills my eyes. But okay, so what is Vite and what is this whole thing about? So I started with server because I thought that would build an understanding, and I think it must have built one understanding. To run a server, you need some sort of server library. In our case, our server library was Express. Okay, our Express using Node.js underneath was able to help us build a web application where it is kind of doing this whole routing model checking and all those things, right? So that is what is happening for a Node.js backend project. Okay, Node.js is running, there is a wrapper around it called Express that takes away all the brunt work, and also most of the APIs, makes it very simple to use, and that's what we end up with. Cool. Similarly for front end, a front end at the end of the day is built of only three things. There needs to be one HTML file, there needs to be one CSS file, there needs to be one JavaScript file. These are the only thing that front end cares about, period. Okay, nothing else. Whatever framework you use, whatever you use, end of the day the browser understands only three things. There needs to be at least one HTML file, there needs to be at least one CSS file, and there needs to be at least one JavaScript file. Images can be whatever you want, but let's see. Doc guide. Okay, this is the vite.dev page, and the response that you see here is a HTML. As I said, there needs to be one HTML. CSS, it has three CSS files, this and this. But end of the day, there needs to be at least one CSS file. You don't actually need to have it. It's good to have if you want some visual aspect, but it's okay to not have it. Okay, so that is our CSS, and there needs to be at least one JavaScript file. uh, if you want to add any sort of interactivity, you don't have to have it, but it's good to have it. And there's the JavaScript. Now whatever framework you use under the sun doesn't matter, it will boil down to these three files, like these three kinds of files. You can have font files, you can have image files, you can have other media. There is a mp3 definitely somewhere on the website. uh, oh, for this pronunciation thing, you can have manifest, you can have a WebSocket connection, you can have a WebAssembly, you can have other type of files which are not there. But end of the day, these three things. Okay, that is the basic of any web development. So all these frameworks, that what they do is they take away this brunt work, and make it easy for you to create websites. So that's what React does. Okay, so React tells you that you want to create JavaScript files for interactivity, you want to create HTML files for your uh, markup or your skeleton of your project, you want to add styling or CSS. How about you create a single JavaScript file .js or .jsx, and inside that file you add all three. You add CSS in that file, you add HTML in that file, you add JavaScript in that file, and then we will use some tool, in this case Vite, to actually kind of compile it to three kinds of files: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, from your perspective, you're writing JavaScript, you're also writing HTML in form of JSX. Okay, okay, wrong website for JSX. JSX React or JavaScript. Hmm. Yeah, there we go. So you're writing a very HTML like syntax in JavaScript, and that is JSX. So yeah, that's what it boils down to in general, with all these frameworks and libraries. Now, Vite also gives you a few more things. When you make a change, you want the browser to reload quickly to show you that change. In our case, in server side, we had a tool which was NodeMon. And Vite internally, if I'm not wrong, and I may be, but hopefully I'm not, uses Express, I think, to actually do the server. Or actually, let me check. If not Express, definitely must use something else to serve our files. Okay, so that's what I'm basically interested in. What server does it use to serve the files? Ah, there we go. So there is a server.js to serve our files, and it does use Express for some things. But okay, the idea is that whatever you are building, Vite is going to create a server to serve those files. I thought that it definitely is Express only. I can see in package.json there is Express types, but it has a Vite press, which I'm not sure. What is that about? Is that their own custom server? Not sure. So yeah, so Vite takes in some sort of server to serve the files. So you will write some JavaScript files. Vite will bundle it. It will create the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, and then show it to you on browser. And once you do a build, it will do some sort of I would say magic for now. So it will do some magic, and it will spit out the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript combined, one file for each. Okay, then you can do some sort of, and that the term would be bundling at that point. Okay, it bundles it out, and you can do some sort of other things like if you want to do lazy loading, instead of having a very big JavaScript file, you can kind of separate it out into different JavaScript files so that you only know load what is required on that page. Example, so in case of Wheat, the getting started page is what we are on, and the features page will also have some JavaScript. But if you are on getting started page, only load the JavaScript that is required on this page. When someone goes over to the features page, then load the JavaScript required on features. When you go to CLI, load that JavaScript. So you can do kind of splitting, bundle splitting here. Okay. So that is what tools like Vite give you, and that is what React gives you. A easy way of writing everything together. Other frameworks exist: Angular, Vue, uh, Next.js, which is a superset on React, I would say at this point. Remix, another good one. Uh, yeah, so many of them exist, but end of the day, just remember what it boils down to. Now, in our case, as I said, we will use Vite with React. So to do that, we just have to run this thing, npm create Vite at latest. Now, instead of my view app, it would be front end folder, and then we have to give it a template. In our case, instead of view template, we'll give it a React template. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go over to our project. Where am I am in, okay, main folder. And now I am going to paste this. Template would be React template, and folder would be called front end. Front end. Yes. Hit enter, and that should have now created a front end folder. There is a public folder inside that, there's a source folder, so it scaffolds the whole project for us. We could have gone and manually set it up, but well, I don't have time to do that. And thankfully it exists. Okay, it takes away all this heavy lifting from us. So now it says cd into the front end folder, then run npm install. But before I do that, let's go over to package JSON. Very similar to what we have for the backend. Okay, but the backend one is actually simpler than the front end one. Name, version, there is a private true which could be removed later. Version is 0.0.0 by default, 1.0.0. uh, Type module. Okay, so now this is the interesting bit. There is a type module. So what does this give you? So here, when we don't define it, the type is common.js. And when the type is common.js, you use the syntax like this: const variable name equals to require. Okay, so that's one syntax. The other syntax that we can use when the type is module is a import syntax, where you can do import, use state from React, let's say, import something from something. So what this is doing is, if I have to do a one-to-one match here, what we are saying is const React equals to require React. Okay, that's what we are doing. And then from React, we want to use the use state. Okay, here we are specifically only pulling in the use state from React. Okay, so that would be tree shaking, if I'm not wrong about the terminology. So those two lines get converted into one line here, or even let's say this line. So that's the idea of this import syntax versus the require syntax. Now, Node.js previously did not used to support the ES module syntax, the new ES next syntax. It used to only support common.js, but in recent times it does. I think since Node 18 or 16, one of those, it does. So technically we could have used the import syntax, but I just wanted to show you the difference. It doesn't really matter because end of the day, uh, it will boil down to one of these syntaxes. Okay, so really it doesn't matter. You can use either. You can go over to package JSON, set type module, in the backend package JSON and change the import style for all of these. It does give this hint that, oh, it's a common JS module. It can be converted to ES. And if I do this, this is what it does. But I don't want to do it right now. So I'm going to leave it as is. Okay, so that it has some scripts that we also had like we created. So it creates all of them before start. That is called dev here. And okay, fine. Dependencies, some of them are installed, some dev dependencies are installed. I don't like the caret, so I'm going to remove all the caret, okay, to have an exact version installed. And is there anything else? No, I think that's good. We had all of this. So we know that, okay, this is what Wheat simplified for us. Okay, thankfully it simplified all of this for us. Now let's do a npm install. If you see, node modules folder does not exist for front end. Now it does. It is being created. Perfect. So that is done. It comes with its own git ignore, but we can actually we have one git ignore in the parent, which is actually exactly what is here. I copied that. So we can remove this one. Node modules will still be ignored. There's a Vite config.js file. In this, there is a configuration of how the Vite server should work. How should it start? How should it stop? There is a README created, which is a template. We can kind of change this to be called one stop extension. Okay. There's a package JSON we saw, index.html, one HTML, one CSS, one JS. Okay. So this is the index.html. Uh, let's run this. So to run this, the command is actually to run the dev script. I'm going to do npm run dev, and it says Wheat has started. And if I visit this particular URL, localhost colon 5173, I should ideally see something. And this is coming from, it says edit app.jsx. Okay. So it's coming from this file where it has a bunch of imports. There is a function defined, and instead of doing module.exports, now we do export default. Okay. So difference between common JS and ES module syntax. In my case, I am going to delete everything. And all I'm going to do is add a h1 tag which says hello. I'm also going to delete this. Not using this gets deleted. There is a app.css, but you know what? Not a big fan. Delete that as well. And format document with this. Index.css, again, not a big fan. I'm going to delete that as well. There's a main.jsx here, which is fine. It imports index.css, which I have deleted already. So going to delete that as well. Okay, so this is done. This is done. Assets folder, not really needed. Delete. Public folder has a Vite SVG, not really needed. Delete. Uh, index.html, it was calling this icon. Well, we deleted it, so I'll remove it from here as well. And if you see in the body, there is a div with id root, and that root is what is referred in the main.jsx. So what it does is it tries to get element by id with the id root, and inside that it tries to render this app file, which in turn contains this h1 tag with hello. So now if I go in here, reload, there we go. There's no fav icon. And this title, Wheat plus React, comes from this title. But well, in our case, we'll call it one stop. Extension. Now if I hover over it, one stop extension. And yeah, I think this is good, right? So we have created successfully a front end, or at least not the whole thing, but we have kind of created some bits and pieces of it. So this is good, I would say. Uh, there is this one unique thing slash important thing slash different from what we have done before, which is this ESLint config. So you can read more about ESLint on their website. Again, I think what they show here in this quick video is, I think, the best way to understand what ESLint does. So find and fix prob length, prob LMES, and it shows you that error. So it statically analyzes your code to quickly find problems. It is built in most text editors, and you can also run it as part of your continuous integration pipeline. The idea is that it analyzes the code and it points out any mistake quickly. Okay, very simply explained, that is what it does. So it will check our code base, and then depending on, okay, uh, what is being created, what you're writing, everything, it will, yeah, just kind of analyze our code and show it to us. Yep, I think that's the easiest and simplest explanation for it. Now you can also tell ESLint to be the formatter for your project. So the difference between linting and formatting, I think they have a very good. Hmm. So linting versus formatting. So ESLint is a linter rather than a formatter. A formatter is something that, let's say, it modifies the look of the code. Example, semicolons, spacing, new lines, white spaces. But a linter actually analyzes your code and tells you, this might be a mistake. Why? Because you're doing something wrong here. This variable name does not exist. You did not import this. You did not import that. A bunch of other things. So that's the difference between linter and formatter. We have a linter in our project which should make it easy for us to do something. Example, if I do a import use state from React, you see this error that comes in. Use state is declared but never read, and it says it comes from ESLint, no unused vars. Okay, so you're trying to use a variable and we don't allow using anything. So, like, we don't allow importing stuff which are not used, so you have to use it. Linter finds this error. Formatter won't. All the formatter does is add semicolon here and there. Like, let's say if I have some spaces here, some spaces here, I do a format document with prettier, which is a formatter, removes the additional extra spaces. Now, as I said, you can actually make your ESLint your formatter if you have a ESLint config defined. To do that, you can go into preferences, settings, UI, search for ESLint, and enable ESLint as formatter. Yeah, ESLint format enables ESLint as a formatter as well. Okay, so you could do this, and now you can format the document with ESLint. And for some reason, it does not seem to work, which is very weird. To check that, we can do a ESLint. Interesting. This is very interesting and weird. Okay. I have no idea what's going wrong here for the time being. So, okay, I'm going to assume. Okay, I'm going to leave it as is for the timing. Okay, so we have created our front end folder. I'll push it in a bit, but we also need to install a few more libraries. And as I said, I like the version to be exact. So I'm going to copy the npmrc and paste it inside the front end folder. Okay, so that will ensure that all our libraries that we install are exact versions. Okay, which libraries that do we want? A bunch of them actually, technically. Most important ones for me would be Mantine. So what is Mantine? Uh, Let me share it quickly. Okay. So it is a UI library and it gives us components which are pre-built so that we don't have to build it from scratch. I was kind of itching to try it out, and thanks to this project sessions, I am now able to. So it's a free and open source React components library. You can go into get started. You can check all the, what do you call, all the components that they have. Okay. I think there is badge, alert, feedback, menu. So all these components exist pre-made, so we don't have to make it from scratch, which is really nice. Okay. So yeah, I was kind of itching to try it out, and now I have time to try it out with this project. So not styles, not guides, not hooks, Mantine core. Yes, you can have app shells, aspect ratio, center, container, like a default container, access container, container without padding. So all those things pre-built exist. So that is one of the libraries that we are going to use. This is built up of multiple library. There's a Mantine core, Mantine hooks. I think it also wants you to install uh, yeah, Mantine hooks, Mantine core. Emotion, I think, is required. Actually, no, not required. Yes, Mantine core, Mantine hooks. Then we'll use another library called as Axios to communicate, to send request and receive response. So in our backend side, sending request, receiving response was handled by Express, but on front end side, we will use Axios to do that. React and React DOM are pre-installed already, so that is fine. That is the framework slash library that we are going to use to write our code. Uh, React Router is the new name of React Router DOM. It is for routing. Okay, routing, which is basically changing the pages, right? Yeah, React Router or React Router, however you pronounce it. And one final thing that we are going to use is called as the stand. So the stand is a state management library. And what is state management? Okay, so let's spend a minute or two talking about state management. So state management is, so in React or even in JavaScript in general, anywhere, uh, any other framework. So state is the data that will change over time. Example, a user information might change, a toggle button might change its state from on to off. uh, Theme switching is another state management change, right? It changes from light to dark or multiple colors. uh, if you get data from API, which in our case we will get data from API, so that is also the changing state, right? So these are all the changing states. And what, only 720p? I'm sorry, what? Is it stuck for you? What's happening? Sorry, I'm trying to answer this question. Uh, Hopefully it should be all right now. I'm not sure. Okay, anyway, so as I was saying, that state management is anything that changes over time. Uh, and you can manage state locally inside React files or React components, as they are called. And we had an example here when we actually created the project. There was this use state thing here, which was managing the state locally. But what if I want to pass this state? So you can pass the state in two ways. If the parent has a change, example, if I create a const counter comma set counter equals to use state and start with 0. Okay, and I add a button here saying that on click it needs to set counter to just 1. Okay, I'm not doing an increment here, setting the counter to just 1. And I say click on this. And what else? Below this hello, I have another h2 which actually shows the value of the counter. So now if I go over here and I do a click, it changes it to 1. I want to pass this 1 to another file. Okay, how do I do that? The another file, I will create another file here. Let's say my file.jsx, and I want the value of counter from there to here. Okay, so how can I pass a value of counter from here to my file? You could pass it via props. Okay, so I can create a counter here, and I can do a counter here as well, and I can then call my file here, and this needs a counter which will be this one. Okay, this could be called anything like counter value. Let's say counter value, counter value, counter value, and that's it. Cool. So now if I reload this, it goes to 0. I click, it passes the value down. Fine, works. The data goes here. That's all we needed. But now what I want is I want to pass the value from child. Okay, so I will create another counter here, and in this case the use states it starts with 5. And then let me actually just copy this thing, and this is a h3. Okay, cool. So now I have a hello which is coming from app.jsx. There is a 0 which is on app.jsx. There is a click button on app.jsx, click app, and this is click my file. And I'll also add a line here so that it makes it easy to understand. Cool. So this is what we have. Now if I do a click app, it passes this. Click my file, it changes it to 1. uh, let's say I want it to change to 6. Click app, this and this. Now I want to pass this 6 to app. How do I do that? Should I call app inside my file? Nope, that's a bad idea, and that wouldn't work. Like doing a circular dependency here. Okay, so in this case, so React does not allow a child to pass value to the parent. Ideally, it does not allow. And sometimes you have child components that want to change the value of the parent. So can we take this state which is defined locally and pass it all the way to the top at some, topmost parent level, where every other component can have access to that? And I'm sorry about this. I'm not sure. Let me do a speed test. I, I have no idea why it's lagging. Probably it's StreamYard. Because from my end, I think it should be fine. But I apologize about the streaming quality and the lag. Okay, so coming back. So is there a way to have a central state somewhere where, every time you make a change in any part of the code base, any part of the component, i- if I make a change in my app, that should kind of bubble up somewhere, exist somewhere at top, and app.jsx can have access to that. And that is where state management comes in. Okay, so that is the idea of the state management. So what we want to do is have a container for our whole application, where every change of data or every state that we think is important, not every state has to be stored there, but every state that we think is important or should be shared with other files can be stored in a state manager. There are multiple state managers that exist. uh, I think Redux is a popular one. The newer version is called Redux Toolkit. So that is a very popular one. I think another one that comes to mind is Zustand. Okay. Another one that comes to mind is kind of React Query, but not exactly React Query. Uh, so I'll have to Google a bunch of other state management libraries that exist. Uh, But in our case, Zastan is a very simple, straightforward one. So previously, okay, not right now, not with Redux Toolkit explicitly, but previously with Redux, uh, there used to be too much of boilerplate code before you could like to manage this whole state. Justan makes it very simple, very easy. It is kind of like less boilerplate code. No, there used to be something called as actions, reducers, dispatches. Justan takes away all of that. It is TypeScript friendly. You can configure Justan to actually persist the state in local storage if you want, or like it will read from local storage. You can also do like asynchronous operations without having more libraries. It allows you to also select only. You can also tell Zastan to only update when certain variables change, not every time anything changes. So there are like too many features to Zastan, and that's why we are going to use it, so that you can get an introduction of how to use Zastan. Sorry about that. uh, Okay, so that is about an introduction to state management and Zustand. Hopefully, there are no questions, and these are the libraries that I want to add. So let's get them added. I'm going to remove this whole my file thing, not really needed. And even from here, all I want is that, and I'll figure out why my ESLint is not working. It was working an hour ago. So I have no idea. Uh, what was I doing? Yes, the libraries that we are going to install. So I'm going to do npm install at mantine core, mantine hooks, Zustan. We don't need emotion. Axios. We do need React router, and we also. I think this is good enough. Yes. And if I go over to my package JSON, They should get added in the dependencies. Mantine core, Mantine hooks, Axios, React DOM, React router, Zustan. And I'll also share this in the chat. So there we go. All the libraries have been installed. How much time do I have left? Let's see. Approximately 10 minutes. Uh, I don't think I'll be able to finish it. So what I'm going to do is we'll take a quick, like we'll stop it after making one last change, which is yeah, let's add Mantine. Okay, very quickly. So to add Mantine, we have to do import, and we'll actually do styling import from styles.css in app.jsx. And then inside the return, we need to do a Mantine provider, which will be imported from Mantine core. Okay. You know what? I will change my default formatter with to prettier for the time being, so that it makes it easy. Mantine provider, and we will add some stuff. We will add with global styles. We'll also add with normalize CSS, and we'll also add default color scheme equals to dark. And inside here, we'll wrap this thing with container, which comes from Mantine core. And we can give it a padding, py, padding on the y-axis. And I will say it is going to be medium padding. And I think that's good. Clear this, and let me do npm run dev. Now if I go over here, do a reload, let's see. What, did I spell it wrong? I spelled it wrong. Okay, let me reload, and there we go. We have a dark mode enabled by default, kind of. There are other color schemes as well. There is a light mode, which, as you might have guessed, is light. And there is also an auto, which depends on your system. If you don't define that, it defaults to light, I think. And I'm going to go with dark. So that is the power of Mantine that we get. And I am going to share this code snippet in, not in chat. Let me push it. Okay, so all I have done is added this container, which is coming from Mantine core and Mantine provider, that wraps everything that we have. There are a bunch of other things that we get with Mantine. So example, we get a badge. Okay. And inside the badge, let's say MLH is what a badge I'm creating. And there we go. A very nice UI uh, for a badge. And then we can also customize it. So you can add a color, you can add a gradient, you can add a size. So let's see, if I go over to badge, I have a size. I want it large, let's say. We can have a color definition. I want it, let's say, orange. And then if I go over here, I didn't have to refresh. It automatically happens. Okay. So MLH GHW, Cloud Week. There we go. Okay, so this is the power of Mantine. We get predefined, pre-created components, and that just helps us in our journey. So now I'm going to push this. Let me go one level up. Clear. Get status. We created the front end folder. Also, there are two more things in lint. So if I run the lint command, it tells me it could not read blah 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 blah. Oh, I have to go into front end folder and then run lint. No errors. You can also have a lint fix command, which will fix any errors. So wrap it in brackets, colon, and this would be eslint all folders dash dash fix. So I can do npm run lint colon fix command. That should fix any errors. So if I have, let's say this, I run the lint fix. Okay, apparently it's not working on this part. I'll have to figure that out why. But other than that, you can have a lint fix. You can also have a format command which formats things for you. Uh, yeah, a bunch of other things. Or oh, we don't have prettier. Probably that's why. Okay, I'll figure that out. Anyways, so let me push all of this. Let me go back a level. Get status. Okay, get add. Get commit. Dash m, the message feature uh, created front end folder, and this was in session 2. And let me do a git push. So now if you go over to one stop Chrome extension, you should have two folders here, front end and the back end. Okay, and yeah, everything should basically work out of the box. Any questions, anyone? I have like last 2 minutes. Let me see. uh I don't know React, what should I do? Just follow along, don't worry about it. uh Ideally, just for the timing, copy paste it, and maybe in the next session we'll discuss a bit more on the React part of it. Okay, now before I end the session, very humble request for feedback once again. Okay, so the link is in the chat for the feedback. All you have to do is visit the link. You will be given a form, and then this time it is not part 1 but the part 2. Build a Chrome extension part 2. Give a rating of how did you like it, what did you not like, give a feedback, and if possible, if there is any constructive criticism that I can incorporate, I will uh, in my next sessions. Okay, so yeah, that's all from me, and there are no further questions. Thank you so much, everyone. And next up, join Ryan to learn Figma to code, learn design with Figma dev mode, how you can do some awesome designs, okay, in Figma. Cool. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye.